All right, welcome in. Hey, everybody, we're back with another episode. Sometimes we cover various product leadership topics, career topics. But as you know, the bread and butter here at Peeling the Product is that we like to peel products, right? So we like to take random products, sometimes the ones you've heard of, sometimes ones you haven't heard of. We like to break them down and peel back the layers so that anybody who's interested in product, looking to break in, or people who just like to kind of be curious about where things are and how other product managers think about things. We peel back the layers on those and try to help y'all understand a little bit more about strategy, go to market, and overall business sense and business case understanding of these different products. So today we have a really cool one that I had never heard about before I met Josh. So with that, maybe I'll pass it over to you, Josh, and why don't you introduce us to the topic of today's discussion?
Yeah, for sure. Well, firstly, thanks for having me. This is fun. Yeah, so the product topic today is the Saturn app. And so, if you're not familiar with what the Saturn app is, it's a mobile application specifically designed for high school students, and it's taking calendar management and social networking and throwing them in a single product. So this app, like I mentioned, is uniquely catering to scheduling and social needs for a high school audience. The app has features like calendar and scheduling, social and community engagement, and different tools to kind of manage the average high schooler's day at high school and all of the different things that may pertain to during their day. The unique selling proposition, like I said before, tailored specifically for high school, schedules integrated with social, making it extremely unique. And I actually think there's a unique product design way that they kind of went about implementing and building this product that you'll see kind of parallels to with other products, and we can maybe talk about that. The addressable market is around 7.27 million students. They're only currently right now on iOS as a platform. They are a free app. They don't have any paid features, no premium, nothing like that. They just recently raised $44 million in funding from several VC firms, from Jeff Bezos' private fund, from Robert Downey Jr., Dylan Fields, the CEO of Figma. So a collective group of investors there. And they're growing like crazy. So rapid growth around U.S. high schools. They have a presence in about 17,000 schools right now over the last couple of years. And then competition, there's different apps like PowerSchool and Blackboard. That those companies have more traditional B2B model where they're working directly with the school. This is a bit different in that the school is not involved at all. This is completely only to the student population, which there's some risk there, and like we can also kind of like dive into that as well. So that's kind of the high level there. I'm definitely curious to hear some thoughts.
Before we go another layer deeper, I wanted to back up just real quick and do a brief intro of Josh. So Josh Dunn is our guest peeler today. I met Josh back in 2019, and we've been talking about product and UX ever since. Josh is a U.S. Air Force vet. He's based in Arizona. You can find him on LinkedIn. And right now he is the product design lead at IBM Cloud, focused on the cloud billing, FinOps, and enterprise account management. And it's a pleasure to have you. The rest of us on the pod tonight are Yogesh Sharma at Health First and Rupu Sharma, no relation that we know of. Rupu is at Amazon. And then Andrew, as you know, is also at IBM Cloud, but Josh and Andrew have not worked together. It's a big company from what I hear.
For what we hear as well.
Yeah.
Trent, well, I'm glad you backed up and did that, because I was just licking my chops trying to get into what this app was. So I'm glad you made it a little bit more official. But yeah,
good to dive in.
So funny. You already knew my coworker before I knew my coworker. Good to meet you, Josh. No, thanks for the introduction there. And just for everybody listening, he's saying Saturn, like the planet, Saturn. So that's the app. Man, this is interesting. Like so many thoughts and questions kind of circling through my mind. and way different from when I was in high school. I won't reveal like how many years ago that was, but long enough ago where I didn't have an iPhone necessarily while I was in high school. So yeah, the times have changed, things are different, and students kind of run the game right now. I do have a few friends who are teachers, and they tell me, I always ask, like, he's a football coach, and I always ask him, like, like, what's the deal with phones in school? And he's like, they're not supposed to have them out, but every kid has a phone, and every single kid has the phone out all the time. And I'm like, don't you make them put it away? And he's like, I literally say it 1,000 times a day, and it doesn't matter how many times I say it, they don't put it away, and I can't make them do it because there's like regulations against that. So that I think is like the behavior that's driving a lot of this, probably a lot of this adoption, and a lot of what we see with these viral apps, with Saturn. And what you were talking about, Josh, made me think of one that I had recently heard about called Gas. Have y'all heard about this?
Mhm.
No.
I mean, we're sounding so old right now, I'm sure, but
You might be the youngest one here though, Andrew.
I could be.
I have a
I could be.
13-year-old that goes into high school next year, so this is
Oh
actually
wow.
relevant in that
Good
sense.
luck. Good luck. No. I don't know if gas is relevant anymore because, as you know, these social networking apps just kind of appear like a flame, like a mist, right? They're there 1 second and gone the next. And this one this one was basically it spread on this viral algorithm, which was you could anonymously vote for like positive superlatives, essentially. So like everybody in the school has this app Gas, and you can say this person looks cute, or what I don't know, like whatever the thing is. Like you can give people random compliments in the app, and it was supposed to be like this positive thing. And so you've got all these people like giving random compliments, and it's addictive because it's positive, right? So you want to go in and see like what somebody said about you that was positive. And so it just took off like wildfire, apparently. And I don't know whatever ended up happening with it. I think it was just like poof, gone, right? But these things can get viral into the millions quickly, millions of users quickly. And so that's kind of what you were alluding to there, Josh. I'm curious, how did you find out about this app? You brought it to us, didn't you?
Yeah. So I think so. My little cousin, he's in high school and he uses it, and he told me about this maybe like a year ago. And then recently, I was reading a Lenny's newsletter article, and he touched on this app. And I don't pay for the premium, so I can't see like the full article. But like the first couple bullets that I read, I'm like, oh, this is pretty interesting, and then didn't really think much about it. And then when Trent approached me to hop on the pod, I was like, this is actually kind of an interesting topic that we can kind of think a little bit more about. They have, from what I've seen, the research I've seen, they have no clear path to revenue. They're, like a lot of things are very ambiguous, and so and like I mentioned before, there's like a unique, I think, lesson in how they actually built their product that I thought was really powerful, and especially for two young founders as young as they are, I think they're like college age, was pretty smart the way they went about it. So yeah,
Enlighten us. What was the unique thing that they did there? You
yeah.
got
So
a good
yeah,
a little crumble, but we need the whole cookie now.
yeah, absolutely. So it's pretty cool. So I mentioned before, it's kind of a hybrid between a calendar management app and a social app. The thing that I think is super interesting is they're building their primary way that they built the app was to build it around the calendar management app and functionality around other competitive apps, such as I think Todoist would be a good example. If just think about like personal productivity. And then they tailored it to a very specific audience, right? Like high school students, and they were years ago high school students. So they spoke kind of from a place of authority, right? They knew the users, and they made that app incredibly powerful for that very specific niche audience. And once they started to get users actually using it and retaining those users for the tool that it was, they started to build social tooling on top of it, right? Which just kind of made it explode. So like they essentially, you could think about obviously like users jumping on an app, a pure social app, there needs to be the supply side demand as well, right? Like if you hop on a social app and there's no one else on the social app, it's kind of rendered useless, right? So like they brought a lot of value to their initial value prop, which is like, hey, let's make this calendar time management app for the high school student around their schedule as a backbone universal experience that everyone at that age goes through, make that incredibly robust. And then once we have strong retention and we're getting into different high schools, and we've iterated with, they had sponsor students at a bunch of different high schools to understand the nuances of how all the different ways and permutations of how a high school daily schedule can be. And then once they have that down, then they expand into the social apps, and it's just exploded, right? And especially at that age, right? It's like you have like one cool kid at the school that has this app, and then everyone's like, oh, like Tommy has this app, I gotta have this app. And so it pops off, right? And I thought that was kind of genius how they did that. And you could see it on other even enterprise software products as well.
Nice. Yogesh, Rupu, either of you want to jump in with anything? If not, I have a question.
I have a question too.
Okay.
Hey Josh.
Good.
Quick question, right? So, and obviously, to start with, I don't know much, about the app, but it looks like, this product is more success, more because of the distribution, right? The social integration and things like that, rather than the actual utility of a product, right? So let's say, like, if you look at product metrics, right? Uh, any insight on, like, how many high school students are actually using the product in a way it's intending to be versus like adoption, right? I think, like, which are two different things, right? Like you said yourself, the social media integration, um, and I'm sure there's some playfulness to it, right? And is there something differentiating both two, right? The adoption or the popularity of the product because of the social media versus the actual utility of a product in a way it makes high school students more productive in some sort.
Yeah, so I think, so I'm looking at the App Store ratings right now. So currently they have a 4.7 rating out of 5, and this has been downloaded over 47,000 times. And so I think as far as the actual utility and value of the app, just based off of, like, of course, like, very young company, not a whole lot of public data to go off of, but you could just see, like, off of the trends that they've experienced and their growth rate currently. I think there is a lot of value to the app that the kids are experiencing. Now, I think you brought up a really good point, which there is integrations, I think, to Snapchat, and I know Snapchat for sure. I'm not sure about the other social apps. So I think that definitely provides some value as well. But I've seen, like, use cases where, sports teams are essentially, like, if you're on the varsity basketball team going out for tryouts, you could use the bulletin board and create a custom group, and so you're talking to all the kids that are specifically trying out for basketball as an example, right? So there's a bunch of niche use cases within the, like, the daily grind of being a high school student that I think the app actually does a really good job of retaining those users. So
Cool. Yeah.
Nice. So my question is, as a Google user and not an iPhone fanboy, I want to know, when is the Android app coming? And so I actually found an email address on their site and just emailed them this morning, and they already got back to me and said that it's there will be a web and Android version in the future, and that I will be notified, but there's no set date for it. But yeah, piggybacking on what Rupu was saying, it's also interesting to note the high priority of safety that they put. Like, it's in their main menu. Safety is actually the first thing, so they seem to be prioritizing it. But it's also interesting that, like, parents and teachers aren't allowed on the app.
yeah.
So it's like, that's probably adds to the appeal for the teenagers to know that, like, hey, this is our little space.
100%. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that was going to be a point that I brought up is, guys, I mean, as a product manager here, knowing the user is really important in every product, but especially nowadays, I feel like this particular demographic that is the making up the main portion of the user base, we're talking 14 to 18-year-olds, right? I don't live in that world just yet. I have a 4-year-old. You're about to, Trent, so you better get used to some of this stuff. And I don't know like how kids and phones work these days and what the boundaries are and all those things are. But by golly, I got to imagine if a parent doesn't want something on a phone, there's probably a lot of conversations in a lot of households about that topic, right? So I just found I was in during my research, I found this website, and Trent, maybe you know about this website, this forum or community called Bark. You heard of
I
it?
haven't heard of that one. No.
Apparently it's like a review website for parents with like kids who have phones, and they just kind of rate different apps out there about, overall safety, harmful content, the propensity for predation, privacy, how valuable it is for the kid, whether or not there's parental controls. This has a pretty low score on Bark, right? So it might have a really high score in the app store. So maybe kids love it. It looks like parents don't, right? And so as product managers, we have to, it has a 2.5 rating out of 5 stars on Bark, right? For parents, basically. So as product managers, we not only have to consider the user, but we have to consider the bubble around the user as well, and what may or may not be like helping the user along in the adoption curve or hurting the adoption curve, right? They may not be the main users of it, but they definitely have influence over them. So especially when it comes to, apps aimed at kids and children, we've got to have that extra layer of thought about everything, every decision that goes into the product. And yes, of course they say privacy is of utmost concern. The company says that, but whether or not that's actually true in practice, we can't tell because we can't get an account because we don't have a high school ID.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Yeah.
Yeah, there's actually a big part of a lot of the fuss with the parents as well. And I've heard that they plugged this hole, but I don't know. I created an account today and it didn't look like they did, or maybe like I haven't seen the full scope of what it really is. But you actually have to sign in with a school verified email. And before that wasn't the case. So like anyone could essentially create an account, right? And then you could map to see all the different students. Like if you say, hey, I went to a Desert Ridge High School, it's a high school by my house. Like if you could say in theory you went there and you see all the list of students who are on the app that go there, but you could be some random person, right? So yeah. I think that's definitely huge security concerns. But from what I understand now, there's that you need to sign up using a school verified email in order to get on the app. I was able to get to the dashboard, but it looks like in order to access social features, you have to verify who you are first. So yeah, I thought that was actually super interesting too. I mean, and it also honestly, like you can take that kind of same point and extrapolate it out to even potential monetization strategies. Like, because it's like how many high school kids really have money to adopt, a higher, maybe not like a freemium, but you go up the product tier and actually start paying for features. Or I feel like that's going to have to come from the parents, and if the parents are against the app, then I feel like the business will probably have to start doing direct connections with the school, or hopefully not ads or something like that. But that does limit, their pathways to monetization in my view.
I bet there are quite a few companies that would love to put their ads on that platform to access that demographic, right?
Yeah. And quite a few parents who are probably like, wait a second, what do you, so I think that's the obvious question here for us to kind of peel back and break down is like, what does the path to monetization look like? If you were the product manager there, what would you do? Before we get there, I think there's a little bit more that we need to discuss in terms of the utility aspect versus the social aspect, right? So I'm having a really hard time understanding why the investment is there from all these big investors, because on the one hand, I mean, I think the two are actually separate, right? Like the adoption curve makes sense. Like if it's growing really rapidly, anything can grow. If your friend invites you to something, like you're going to take the invite and you're going to look at something, but is it sticky? Is this something that's going to stick around and somebody going to continue to use? For that, you look at a couple of different things, right? And so what I'm seeing based on just like initial research of Saturn is it's essentially got that calendaring element. It's got the you can share your schedule with friends. You can like basically organize your calendar, and I think you can message other students, right? So in terms of the meat there's really not a lot of meat, right? Like how important is it for you to know your friends' calendars, right? Like you kind of figure that out as you go. Not only that, but it doesn't feel durable to me because there's so many other tools out there on the internet that, I mean, Google Calendar, I mean, of course they're not built and like generally geared towards this specific demographic, but there's a lot of substitutes that exist that, might easily get this job done in just the same, almost the same way, maybe not as cool, but, functionally it's pretty close. And then it's the chat piece. How many chat tools do we need, right? Like they've got Snapchat, they've got Instagram, they've got whatever, whatever these other, Be Real, whatever these other apps are. Like, I think there's going to be ultimately, a death to, superfluous chats and apps that aren't needed. So I don't know. What do you guys think? I'm having a hard time seeing how this is going to like be successful past this initial adoption curve and be a utility that someone's going to use all the time.
My
Yeah.
my initial question was like, around the same theme, right? As I was looking at their website, they published a blog yesterday, and it says a new way to connect with friends, right? The only really productive thing or productivity related things here, they're talking about school directors, not sure, like, if I'm in a class, I probably know like everyone who's in my class, or at least know the people that I need to be with. And beside that, they're focusing on friending and things like that, right? So yeah, that's one thing that had crossed my mind, right? Utility versus, having a product to connect with your friends in the same high school, right? And I was kind of having the hard time really understanding, what is the uh, it's almost like, every product had some kind of chatbot element these days, right? Or a networking element. But as far as the actual utility, right? How does it really make a high schooler's life better?
Yeah, I can't help but wonder what their daily active users and weekly active user metrics look like. It seems like it would be most useful at the beginning of a school year or at any kind of transition point where classes change, and you're trying to like coordinate with friends of like, okay, I'm in this class after that one, we're gonna walk past each other in the hall, let's meet up, whatever. Those sorts of things might be part of it. And also just, maybe having the same teacher but in different periods or something gives them something to talk about. They can share homework, they can coordinate that way. I don't know. Those are a couple of the deeper use cases that come to mind.
Can I ask a question to you guys? Because I have never done a schooling at the school level. I know I went to high school, did my graduation over here. But how common is school transfer in US?
I don't.
In the mid-year, that's one question that comes to my mind. And the second, which is really challenging from my perspective, and I'm thinking from the user-based perspective, is that just syncing a calendar is not providing a too much value to the end customer, and it's 14 to 18, which we're talking about. Even the chat element is not providing too much value. If it's asked me, as Andrew rightly pointed out, that yes, there are so many Snapchats and whatnot. One of the biggest concerns that I have seen, like after listening to so many horrible stories across, that bullying is one of the things which can happen on the class chats. What kind of thing they are building against that kind of uh, situation in the future? So none of these things is right now putting me in the mindset that yes, this is something useful in the long run, where companies or any investor should put up big money, which is a big question. That why are people investing? Because this is another application which will come and go, or which it will stay. And if it stay, for what reason it should stay? Because I don't see any distinction right now from any other application that you have mentioned.
They must have talked about AI in their pitch deck, and that's what got them the money.
I mean, like, I think, like, we should separate the investment part from the actual utility part, right? I think like, you see that across Silicon Valley where like, people will throw money at any new thing because there's always that chance of like, pivoting into something
Mm-hmm.
else. And then, at the end of the day, you do have data for 7 million high school students, right? And that's a huge asset, right? But like, even when you think about this calendar thing, right? How
Mm-hmm.
much of a high school students' weekly calendar is dynamic versus static, right? Am I not taking the same class throughout the year? I mean, like, is my class like,
Well,
not at the same time, not at the same place,
Exactly.
so
right?
It might change like every semester, but like it
Yeah,
takes
or
you a day
quarter.
or two to figure out where you need to be. And then
yeah,
how often
Mhm.
do you need to log in and see where to go next? Like,
You know what's interesting though? My daughter in her middle school, they have what they call purple days and teal days. Those are their school colors. So they
Mm-hmm.
alternate back and forth. Literally every other day is
yeah.
different.
and and
And
and
Um,
and
and
even if
these kids are not used to using a calendar, and like some of them,
Okay.
they have trouble sticking to or remembering what's
yeah, but you
next,
figure it
or
out. I mean,
they don't even know what time it is, let alone where they need to
and
be.
I don't know this for a fact, but like, if you look at, all high schoolers, they do all their homework on a laptop, right? So like, it's very unlikely that a high school wouldn't have some sort of mechanism to electronically give them a schedule, right? Even if it's a screenshot of, your school schedule on the phone, right? Like, my brothers have two daughters, three. They all go to high school. They do all their homework on a laptop. They talk to their friends on the phone. So not sure, like, where I really do not understand what is the problem with the high school students not knowing their schedule.
Well, and
um
it's beyond the school day too. It's after school events as
yeah,
well.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I thought the same thing. Like, I really do think that there is power there's power in, I mean, when I think back to being a high school student, having my schedule decentralized from authoritative systems, right? Like, if the school is giving you something and the school can overlook everything that we're talking about, then it's instantly not going to be cool. If the parents can do the same, it's instantly not cool, right? So it's like, it's a peer-to-peer, like, student specific thing that I think appeals to them, right? And I think it's like, I mean, we could even ask ourselves, like, how often, because I know the answer for me is a lot, how often we use products that have a very low utility for us, but we use them because there's some sort of like social pull or some sort
yeah.
social credit, right,
Cool
that you
factor.
get for that. So I think that is very powerful. And like, to the investment piece of it, like, I agree 100%. I think the founders, are young, very bright. I think Silicon Valley likes that narrative, that archetype, right, of the young dropout, college dropout, that's a genius, and they'll throw a ton of money into it, and sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't. And I think also having the data of all those high school students, yeah, like, that alone, you could argue would be worth $44 million. So
I think that's the key point here. I really think the data for high school students, capturing the data, interest for high school students, and maybe this utility thing is a gateway to get into school, like, because now you can present that, hey, your app is productive, right? Because if you think across major social app, Instagram, right? We know Instagram has had a problem with even Facebook attracting those young students, right? So this may be a pointing towards that, right? Where like they understand that, okay, Instagram, Facebook, you know y- they're not having success in attracting high school students because of like child safety or whatever it is, right? And hence like they want to introduce this app within the high school arena, with some kind of utility, but with the end goal of like social integration, social whatever you want to call it, be the main sticky reason, right? Um,
yeah, yeah,
so
and I think, by the way, like, this is also, I mean, if you take this is obviously far different than this, but you take a company like Figma as an example that started bottom up, right, where they essentially made a product for a very specific user, which is a designer, made it incredibly good for them to use, and it grew grassroots. And then as it started to grow, more designers started to use it. Then they started to use that bottom up sales funnel to start to speak to buyers in these organizations and then start to adopt the tool and use that as a enterprise sales motion. So like, I think this is also like the same pattern is kind of taking place here, right? Where they have a ton of schools already onboarded, a ton of students already onboarded, and then they can go to schools and say, hey, I know you're using PowerSchool XYZ. We can build these other tools that you're using, integrate them with our platform, and you already have all of these students onboarded. We understand pain points of the students better than anybody else. So I think that's a very powerful story. So that could be another avenue they take as well.
That's exactly what I was about to bring
Yeah.
up. So you're not the Figma piece in the building. That was a good analogy. Like, but what you said about, okay, if they are going to be adopted in all these schools, now that we're there, what can you do with it, right? Because it's like, because I think we're all in agreement. It's like a simple calendar and a simple chat is not going to cut it. But there are there's really 2 or 3 things that are like really going for it. One, you hit the nail on the head, like no authority around, like it feels a little like fun and secretive to have like your own calendar and like, hey, I got, some independence there. There is some merit to that. The next thing is community, right? We all know like community products that are centered around community tend to be successful. And so you can build your own little community at school, in your digital world there. And then the other thing that's really going for it is the fact that, if there is this like virality coefficient, that's like you invite a friend and friend groups join and more friend groups join, then like you said, you have this footprint across, I guess it's just America right now, but you have this footprint across America where you're now able to collect and see a lot of data in a lot of places. And that data is precious, right? Because it's hard to reach that segment. And I think we all know from experience, like whatever 14 to 18-year-olds say is cool, everybody else tries to copy. And then, soon you have millennial moms doing that, and then it's not cool, and then they find something else to do, and then something else becomes cool. But for whatever reason, 14 to 18-year-olds drive what's cool in our society, and I'll never understand it. But hey, I got my next pair of Yeezys on the way, right? So so all I'll say is let's kind of let's provide a little bit of structure to the rest of this conversation. So let's just talk about 2 more questions, and not everybody has to answer. I think question number 1 is, if you were there, if you were a product manager there, what would be your like top priority in terms of how to make this a more durable application beyond just the calendaring and the chat feature, right? I feel like those are the 2 things that they're touting on their website, but we need more. So what would you guys propose? And then the second thing is, what are the first experiments that you would look at for monetization, and at what point would you do that? So those are the 2 questions, and then we can I think that'll be a good peel. We can wrap it up from there.
Can I come in?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I would like to experiment with something, because this is high school student we're talking about. I will like to add something called tutoring over there, since we are trying to build a community over here. And it provides a great opportunity to build a community within a school and also the outside the school. Right now, if anyone can confirm that whether this is only limited to the school, or you can also talk to the student from the other schools. Do you have any idea about it?
No idea, but it feels feasible.
It's feasible, yeah. So that's where, if you just remember, that's how the Facebook started, like within the Harvard, and then you expand it outside. So that is the one way of looking at it, like how you want to build a community, the tutoring opportunities, where some of the kids are looking for the constant mentoring, and the senior ones can provide that kind of opportunity, but also it provides the opportunity to learn from each other. And that's where I've seen a lot of students struggling at this age. That's the first thing that I am thinking of doing that, and I want to see where it goes in next 6 to 9 months.
I have similar thoughts. Okay, and somehow I was thinking of a similar app. So if you think about all high school students pretty much like they're looking for a job, right? Mostly in retail and things like that, right? So I would actually consider that, right? Some integration with clothing jobs or whatever retail jobs, right? Where people can if you look at TikTok, right, the baristas in Starbucks sharing their work videos and stuff like that, right? So I would find some kind of integration with allowing them to find jobs and then use that to create more content, right? Hence virality. But the other thing, like I almost think like this whole app is built as a top of the funnel, right? Because once you start talking about social media and then once we start talking about social media integration, let's say like Facebook, Snapchat, whatever, right? Why is that integration itself not a monetization opportunities, right? Because like if I am integrating with any other app, then this app becomes a top of the funnel, right? So I think like even integration with apps or like any product or services that caters towards like high school, and here we talk about 7 million, right? I think that integration in itself is a monetizing opportunity. And even that you could maybe like dissect into, is it just like integration based, or like depending on how much data you want to share with the other product and services. So I think just that could be an opportunity.
I don't have anything to offer in the way of answering the questions just yet, but my only feedback on that, Rupu, is I don't know how many of them are looking for jobs anymore. Like, I don't know. It seems like in the towns that I've been in and I live in, it seems like there's less and less high school students working those traditional jobs that we all used to work in the retail stores and the restaurants around town. They're way better and way better than we were at figuring out how to make a buck off the internet. So it feels like they're a lot more entrepreneurial hearted and willing to kind of go out on a limb and try to do something of their own in the content space, maybe, or some other, Amazon drop shipping, who knows? But it seems like that's the route a lot of them take. And there's a less percentage. And I actually seen a chart on this. I think it's like 20% less like nowadays high school students are getting jobs versus what it was when I was in high school. So that's a big drop. Also, I think what's replaced a lot of that is gaming. They've gone,
Yeah.
a lot of them started gaming instead of going to work. Anyways, that's just my 2 cents on that. So I would definitely think I would do some more research and think about that, but it's a good idea overall.
And there's some like common approaches too, right? That follows the norm, like educating high school students on finances, right? Personal finance. So I think like you have some of those opportunities that you could integrate with product and services that kind of like tailor to them.
Absolutely.
The TradFi afterwards, right? Um, but again, at the end of the day, right, like when you talk about monetization, like you have to add value to the to the other provider too, right? And at the end of the day, everyone is looking about like what are the segments that are willing to spend money, right? Just like content watching, and that's not going to be enough, right? um yeah.
What would you do, Josh?
It's kind of nuanced for me. Like, I think it would really just depend on like what their vision is, and like what their risk tolerance with their investors are. So like how much runway they have. I think there's probably a quicker path to revenue if they go like a traditional kind of like B2B, and they start to target schools and say, hey, we have these students. Now let me try to
Then you lose the
essentially
cool
build.
factor.
What's that?
But the trade-off is you lose the cool factor.
You lose the cool fat, you do, yeah. And that's a quicker way, I think, to money. I think if you were trying to keep it more like a consumer app straight to the high school student, I would probably try to find out the kind of secondary and tertiary experiences of what a high school student goes through that could be built off of the app, and then probably hide those behind a paywall and do some experimentation there and see kind of what the threshold is. If students can afford to pay $3.99, right, and try to grow it that way. Yeah, so that would be kind of my thought. You gain and lose with both options, obviously, but that would probably be like my gut feel with the information that I have.
Yeah, this is really interesting. I'll throw in my 2 cents. I'll keep it pretty short, but the other line of thinking I have is to let the schools and maybe even at the district level, let them get a view of what's going on inside an app and kind of brainstorm ideas for how they could be a limited participant in the platform without or without completely killing the cool factor. If the center of your mission is still going to be around the students, then that can be prioritized. And even as you go and talk to the schools and districts, you can hold a hard line on that and say, okay, we don't need you, school administrators, we don't need you here for this platform, this community to exist. So these are the rules, like these are the terms of our engagement, essentially. So they hold all the cards. And if it's not to their liking, then they can just say no. But I would at least be experimenting and having conversations with those, heads of schools and heads of districts to understand various use cases that might be palatable to both sides, essentially turning it into a bit of a two-sided marketplace and tapping into the districts and schools pockets.
Yeah, I wonder if there's a way too with just the data that's being collected that it could be used to essentially export that information and use it in college applications. I mean, if you're talking about certain things that you're going over in class, certain assignments you have, maybe you're playing sports, maybe you achieve certain awards or you have a job, right? In theory, the app is mapping out that entire schedule. And it's maybe you do things that you kind of even forget. Like when I'm writing my own resume, I'm like, I shipped a bunch of things that I don't even remember half the things that I did, and to have to go back and try to remember. So I mean, you could, provide maybe some sort of bundling of everything that you've done and generate kind of like an AI, year in review that you could essentially use to import into college systems or something like that as well. So
Yeah, I think you guys are like now I'm starting to see like everything you guys just said. I'm starting to see like maybe why the investment was there. So and it's basically there's so much potential. If you can capture the attention of this particular segment, there's a lot you can do with it. And parents, schools, they will let it fly if there's value to be gained, right? Whether that's college, getting more organized and ready for college, whether that's tapping in and having better communication with the school system, whatever it happens to be. Like this could be that mesh. Like maybe you don't want to like give access to the school and to the parents too soon, but someday it could evolve into that meshing point where you still give students the privacy they need to think it's cool, but you also give access at the right amounts to the schools and to the parents to be able to have insight and visibility into what's going on, what's coming up, and keep everybody in sync and in the loop, right? Like right now I have a 4-year-old in elementary school and I get like a phone call every day with a voicemail that tells me what's going on. And while that's really nice, I didn't have that when I was growing up. That's really nice. It still requires me to like listen to a voicemail or like watch a video or of this principal telling me what's going on, versus if it was all integrated into an app and everybody checked it like once a day, then that's that, and where to go every single time. That's pretty nice, right? So there's a lot of potential there. I'd like to land the plane on this conversation, but I think there's a lot of potential in like the yearbooking space here, right? So like if this is going to be all about school, I do think that students would cough up some cash to like create some sort of physical yearbook from this app, right? So if you've got everybody in your school on this app and it's capturing all the events from the year, what happened on the soccer team, what happened in the key club, what happened in the theater club, and it's capturing all this information digitally, I think there's a way to print like photos and different things and just like, hey, AI is going to generate this sick yearbook. It's $20. If you want it, we'll ship it to your door. You just got to click this button here and it'll automatically do everything for you. Right. I think if you wanted to to monetize that way instead of through like ads, that to me feels a little bit safer for parents to be like, oh yeah, like, you know, yearbooks are lame usually, but this one seems cool, right? If there's a way that you can reimagine that, you know, beyond what I just said, there's probably some creative kid out there who could think of like the sickest yearbook ever. I think there's probably some monetization potential there because you're already at the school. But anyways, I think this is a really cool conversation, a really cool thing to think about. I'm going to keep thinking about it because I had never heard about it until this week, and you guys offered up some really great thoughts. Any closing thoughts before we sign off? Josh, we're really thankful for you to be here and share this with us and break it down with us. And, you know, I enjoyed the time. Hope you did. Any closing thoughts from you?
No, thanks for having me. This has been super fun. I enjoy talking about this stuff. So it's been a blast.
Awesome. Well, appreciate your time, and hope everybody has a good rest of the night.
You too. Thanks.
Thanks all. Take care.